Alright, 10-minute timer starts now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the 4th episode of my series where I talk in front of the camera for 10 minutes in order to improve my social skills, my impromptu social skills I should say. Now today I want to discuss something that personally resonates with me, and that is detach yourself from the outcome of your actions in order to find clarity in the purpose of those actions. Now, that might seem like a lot to unpack because it sounds very complex, but in reality, it's quite simple. Understand why you do things. It all boils down to that, understanding why you do things. And how exactly do you understand why you do things? Well, that is a great question. You do that by detaching yourself or not associating yourself or your worth with what you expect. Now that can sound a little bit counterintuitive in some scenarios. Like, you go to the gym, you want a motive as to why you are in the gym. Whether that's to build muscle, build endurance, build athleticism, build power, build speed, build agility, any of that. You need to have a goal, right? And that is ultimately your end result. However, the outcome in this scenario is the expectations you set for yourself. And this quote I especially find helpful because whenever you're actually making progress in the gym, whether you may be falling behind or you think you're falling behind or getting ahead, it's all about perspective. And I say perspective as in where you may be right now might be someone else's goal. Or wherever you are right now, someone else may be objectively ahead of you. And that's where perspective comes in, because it can be what makes or breaks your goals. And this is quite relevant to me because I struggled with the same things too. I struggled to acknowledge how far I've actually come in the pursuit of being better because I've kept increasing my limits. I've kept increasing my threshold of what is expected of me, that I forgot to actually take a step back, go through all my past videos to see all the progress that I've made. And that's what it's all about, you know. Ultimately, seeing where you started and where you are now, despite all the time you spent trying to just be better and be better, it's important to have that time to reflect and not forget your origins. We're constantly living in a world where we think that we always have to keep going and going in order to not lose sight of the crowd, which we are made to believe is ourselves. And what I mean by that is, we see people online trying to tell us, oh, if you don't do this, you'll start to quickly fall behind. But in reality, we need to ask ourselves, who are we falling behind to? The expectations that the world has on us, or the expectations that we have on ourselves? Now, I get it can be pretty important at times to actually to keep up with the world's pace, because like I said before, the environment doesn't wait for you. But that also doesn't mean you should rush your decisions, because if you ultimately analyze what is it that you're trying to achieve and who is it for, you'll know what direction to take. If it's genuinely for yourself and for your improvement, then that shouldn't be a hard question to answer. But if it's for other people, you should be asking them, what are they trying to achieve? Why do they want this to happen? And the moment you actually detach yourself from the outcome and start doing what's actually right, is the moment you start understanding why you're actually doing things in the first place. And that also relates to how not everything is black and white. We see the yin and yang, the two contrasts, but we don't also see the grey area of things. And we also can't be judging other people for what they're doing unless it's like morally incorrect. But we have to take in the context of what they're going through, which is also why we shouldn't be so judgmental towards others. Us humans, we have the capacity to judge everything. It is innate that we look at the negatives of situations, which is usually the outcomes of what happens when we judge people. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't judge people, but we should also judge the positive aspects of it. Because once we judge them for who they are, which includes both the positive aspects and the negative aspects, then you'll have an insight on what your mentality is. Because if you can only identify the negatives in someone, sure, maybe it could possibly be true. But if you can't also identify the positives in other people, that just means you're expected to think a certain way, and that's why you do. Whether that's an expectation from yourself, or if it's something the environment led you to do. And understanding that, it can lead you to what actions you have to take. Because if you keep thinking in such a negative way, you lose track of your origins and where you've come from. I'd recommend spending time each day just disassociating yourself with the cold, modern, minimalist lifestyle that us humans have adapted to over the centuries amidst its aesthetics. When in reality, we needed some more color in my life. Like, I'm in nature right now. This is where we've all come from. Now, I'm not saying go follow the carnivore diet or take a bite of this or any of that. No. But just come out in nature every once in a while. You'll get to know where you've really come from, and how you interact with nature also determines. It determines, but it's also the backbone of how we think, how much we've interacted with nature, and our quality time with nature. You've probably heard a bunch of birds chirping, and it makes me happy, it's natural. I listen to a lot of music that isn't really, it's made electronically, and while it does sound good, you release dopamine, you release endorphins. We tend to forget, I tend to forget that natural sounds, the music that's come from the nature, from like acoustic drum kits, guitars, that was the backbone of it all. When